Atto, thank you for so expertly setting up the day for us, explaining roughly what we will be doing, where we will be doing it, and frankly, even probably who we're sitting next to, and that saved at least 5 minutes in my speech. So welcome everybody to the first day of the Congress. Welcome to Athletics Connect. And it seems barely credible that it's 5 years ago that actually some of you were probably in this building, because this was the venue for all our fighting sports, boxing, wrestling, judo, and of course weightlifting. So I'm really hoping we get through the next 2 days without too many fights. You never know, but I'm not going to promise that there won't be any heavy lifting, because we've got a big agenda to get through. 2 years ago, I was standing here as a president in waiting. And on that occasion, I talked to you about my commitment to our sport. I talked about the journey that we had to take to embrace the 4 pillars that we needed to reach out and to broaden the appeal of our sport, to embrace change, to decentralize, to empower our member federations, to maximize commercial growth, and of course to enshrine integrity and trust in pretty much everything we do within the sport and within our organizations. Tomorrow at our Congress, I'll talk about where we are. I'll outline the work that we've done and that work we've done together, and it's been mountainous in the last couple of years. And frankly, again, it's all been about delivering on those 4 pillars. And it's substantial. And it is despite, maybe even perhaps because of the challenges our sport, the IAAF, has confronted in the last 2 years. But today, I want to talk about the challenges that we face, that our sport faces. And this is what this convention is designed to do. It's designed to help, maybe even promote, debate, discussion, and help us navigate by confronting some of these challenges to solutions that actually improve our sport and improve all those issues that we are here to discuss. Sport, as we know, and I really don't need to say it, sport, as everybody in this room knows, is about hard work, it's about world-class coaching, it's about focus, and as Atto just mentioned, it's actually about the ability of our athletes to devote over half their young lives to the promotion of excellence in all its forms. But we also know that sport has been sorely tested. It's been sorely tested in the last 2 years, and it is up to us to address those challenges in a way to address that deficit, a triangular deficit of trust, relevance, and leadership. And before we beat ourselves up on that, these are not fragilities unique to our sport. They can be found in most other sectors, in industry, in businesses, in academia, in politics. So sport is not unique, and it's not alone in the challenges that it confronts. So what are those deficits? I think there are 3 of them. First of all, there is our ability to remain relevant, and that's a survival instinct of any good brand, any good company, any good organization. The second side of that triangle is about retaining trust, and the other side of that triangle is the delivery of constant, reliable leadership. So let me take them in order of that triangulation. First of all, relevance. And relevance is not just about looking at what we do. That is, of course, important. But crucially, it's about looking at the world that is around us. And it means focusing not on generalities, but focusing on specifics. Let me give you a good example of that, and we probably all do this from time to time. We all talk semi-knowledgeably about millennials. We talk semi-knowledgeably about young people. Do we really know what their choices, their thinking, their actions mean for our sport and for our businesses? And it's not just about the selection of what is on offer. It's actually about the choices young people make, and in a way it's even more than that, because it's about behavior as well. And the world, as we know, is a vastly different place now for a young athlete or a fan than it was for me and most of you who were growing up in the sport and trying to figure out where our place in that ecosystem was. What we did have then that we don't have now is time. Pen pals, you remember them? I had a few pen pals. Every few weeks I'd send a couple of clipped lines to them about the food I enjoyed, the hobbies I undertook, the football teams I supported, what I liked, what I disliked in the classroom, maybe even on the track. Today, our children, our grandchildren are communicating through one line, a shared picture, a joke, an opinion, to millions of people. And within moments, that single conversation becomes a global conversation. And that is powerful, but it is also quite destructive. The speed with which we share good and bad, frankly, is mind-boggling. It's the difference, as we will hear this afternoon, it's the difference between promoting a sponsor product and blowing a sponsorship deal. Frankly, it's a difference that is now as close as first and second in a tight 100 meters. And how that affects the behavior of young people is also crucial. Does it make them more cautious, less cautious, more trustful, less trustful, more confident, less confident? We also know that in the last couple of years, all sport, has lost a significant amount of trust. Now, that's not a particularly revolutionary thought, nor is it a revelatory thought, but it is the fact that our sport has also lost trust. And we are involved, all of us are involved in the process of rebuilding. And as you also know, it's a long journey. But it's a journey that we've started purposefully. In the last 8 months, we rewrote, in the space of 8 months, we rewrote the Constitution. What in old money does that really mean? It meant making 200 changes. It was about setting in motion a chain of reforms that allow us never to return to what we've had to confront. And frankly, there are some days that we are still confronting that. I don't think anybody, anywhere in the world, looking from within our sport or from outside our sport, could genuinely say that we have treated this anything other than very, very seriously. And we know other sports are looking in at what we're doing. They're asking us about what we're doing. And for many, they see what we have done as a template of good practice. So some of those reforms, if we're being honest, are basic governance reforms. They're the sorts of reforms that most of you have got very used to in your own national organizations, let alone global organizations. Some of those reforms and changes represent our ability to set goals and standards in representation, and you'll hear a lot more about that today. Global representation, gender representation, age, ethnicity, and giving greater voice to the athletes. But the core of those reforms is about trust and integrity. How we want people in our sport to behave, to act, to raise the standards of conduct, to be sure where those standards of conduct actually sit. And everyone in this room has a part to play in that. We must have the powers, we must have the tools to be able to deal appropriately and adequately with behavior and actions that we instinctively know when we see that falls below the standards that we want to live up to. So a huge part of those reforms, actually, in large part, the purpose behind those reforms was also the creation of the Athletes Integrity Unit, and we'll be discussing that later today. And I'm very proud, as we all should be, to be able to say that the Athletics Integrity Unit is really the first of its kind, and it's addressing those failings that we need to fix, and it is also, again, promoting debate, discussion and transparency, particularly for the athletes and particularly for our fans and partners. So bear in mind that when you take part in the governance and the conversations, the discussions around the Athletic Integrity Unit, will it stop people from cheating? Everybody from cheating? No. That's not the real world. But what we really do need to communicate, and there will be an athlete session at the end of the day, is that we are always in the corner of the clean athletes, and that cheating will not be tolerated. Cheats will get caught because the technology we now have available to us is better than it's ever been. And as Usain Bolt said just overnight, that is the way to regain trust in our sport. So last and certainly not least, leadership, the third side of that triangle. I remember as an athlete, and Atto, I'm sure you would agree with me and all the other athletes in here, that athletes crave criticism. They crave constructive criticism. They work with coaches. And leadership today is a very different concept than it was 20 or 30 years ago. The very nature, the very definition of leadership, I think, has dramatically changed, and it's certainly not that clear. How do we define it? Is it about getting people to do what we want them to do, or is it about stopping people doing what we don't want them to do? And I think it's fair to say that wherever you look in this landscape, and leaders of 20 years ago and leaders of today, and that's you, will all readily admit that that landscape has dramatically changed. None of us stay around for the same length of time that we used to, either in or outside of our sport. I was reflecting the other day that I have 5 predecessors as presidents of the IAAF. One of them only lasted 7 years. The IAAF was set up in 1912, so it doesn't really take too many arithmetic skills to recognize that on balance, we've all been there about 30 years. That's never going to happen again. The Samaranches, the Blatters, the Ecclestons, even the Fergusons and the Wengers are never going to be left in positions of unfettered power for that length of time. And here we've set the tone within the IAAF as well, because we've also settled upon term limits to make sure that we have oxygen always blowing through the organisation. We've introduced checks and balances to our leaders. We've got command and control that, in a way, is something that we will always part from. So there is only one worse thing than bad leadership, and that is no leadership at all. If you get something wrong in the 24/7, always-on culture, it's the ability to break you, and there are examples of that all around us. And it's because of these changes that we need also to discuss, what does the IAAF look like in 20 years? Are we a regulatory, a code-making body that probably says no more than we say yes? These are things that we need to discuss, and that's what I hope comes out of today. So the lesson for me is clear. Big universities, big organizations, big businesses, big armies, big sports, in a monolithic, sclerotic format, are not going to be the organizations that are going to serve our fan base, our client base, as well as they should. They're not going to disappear, but simply getting the way we want things to happen rather than the shared way across the line is going to be a greater challenge than it's ever been. So we come together today as a sport that has embraced sensible, incremental change. We want to modernize and we want to be accountable. And today's sessions, I think, really articulate these challenges. How we govern ourselves, sessions on gender and area alignment, area representation, how we remain relevant, how do we maintain that fan base. There are sessions that I've asked speakers to join us from outside our sport, from other sports but other organizations that can talk about how they have embraced some of these challenges. We've got sessions that showcase some great, exciting innovation. We've also got sessions that are going to focus on development around grassroots and around coaching. And we're all, of course, in the business of trust and rebuilding trust, so there'll be sessions on governance, the athletic integrity unit, and the voice and role of the athlete. So today is a busy day. I want you to participate. As Atto said, I want you to split your resources. We need you there. We need your reviews. We need your opinions. We need your feedback in helping us shape the future in a sport that we all love. And I'm delighted that you're all here today to lead on this. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for being here.